Okay.
Well, good evening and thank you for joining us. As you might have guessed, I'm not at home, I'm traveling, but we continue to do the show because the show must go on. Thank you for your patience, for being kind enough to wait for me while I was on a 2-day vacation, but it's time to get back to work. Like I keep telling you, at 8 o'clock every day, we do a discussion on this YouTube channel, talking about matters of national importance, in our opinion. And we bring in experts who will give us a perspective on these matters and help us understand things better. That's the idea with this show, to be able to understand things better. Thank you to all of you who are wishing me happy birthday on the chat window. It's nice to be back. You might hear some partying sounds in the apartment next to me. It's not me, somebody else is partying. But let's get back to the conversation right now. What we are going to talk about, we've got some amazing experts, and we're going to talk about this whole TRP debate, right? It's important to also understand why we're talking about it. Why is the TRP debate of national importance? Because it's effectively television ratings. And we saw the Mumbai police say they're going to investigate television ratings, and we're going to get to whether or not that's the job of the police in a bit. But here's the reason why I think we should talk about it. Everybody's television rating.
Oops.
Or anybody else, everybody's ratings get measured. People decide whether or not to advertise on channel number 1 or channel number 2 based on the ratings. But it's only in news that there is sort of a garish chest thumping of I'm number 1, you're number 1, I'm better than you, look at this. And now actually it's devolved to a point where channels are calling each other out on Twitter saying, oh, are you number 4 because I'm number 1? Where does that actually leave the news viewer? Because of all of the various content you have on television, news is the most sensitive content. Should news be chest thumping about ratings? Is there a problem with the rating system? Does that affect the quality of the news that you access on television in some way? If, for example, as a news channel, I have ratings, my advertisers decide based on the ratings whether or not to advertise, and that decides whether or not I survive, viability and financial wise. But if my ratings itself are flawed or rigged or manipulated in some way, where is the motivation for me to do good, honest journalism for you? Where are the goalposts here for the news industry? And this is important because, as I keep telling you, responsible news is a primary ingredient in making responsible citizens. And if citizens are not well informed, the democracy will collapse around our ears because we won't know what we're voting for because nobody told us the truth. So actually, it might sound like it's a light conversation, but it's not. It is of national importance because the way our news industry behaves actually decides what kind of a democracy we are and what we will be. And that is a really, really important conversation to have. Chat window is open. We'll take questions. But like I said, these are the questions I'm going to ask. Is the system of measuring flawed? Does it allow for tampering? Should there be an overhaul? Why does industry and advertisers continue with it if it's a flawed system? Why are channels allowed to manipulate the data and to chest thump? Should there be a code of conduct for them? And is this something the police should be investigating? Let me just give you a quick base of what we're talking about, right? So BARC is the agency that measures television ratings. And this data that they collect is then given to television channels by it in order for them to see, oh, how did they do, which day did better and things like that. And you get a breakup of every hour over every day once a week. This data is also bought by advertisers who use it to decide which channel they want to advertise on. There are now 40,000 people meters, little boxes, they're called. They're called people meters. These boxes are put in 40,000 households across the country. And the family is told to continue to watch TV, but every member of the family gets a different remote control so they can measure whether dad was watching or mom was watching or kids were watching. This is how they basically decide that, okay, it was the children like this program more. That's how it's done. Now, we have to remember that these 40,000 boxes, these meters, are extrapolated to about 80 crore people who have televisions in the country, which is a stretch by any yardstick, right? Now, out of this, English news is about 1% of the entire market, which means 1% of the 40,000 as well, which means on an average, there are about 500 people with boxes in the whole country watching English news. And if one particular guy decided to watch one channel all day, it would skew the numbers completely on the other side because it's such a small sample. Anyone who studied statistics will tell you, if you have a really small sample, so if you only have, you know, 6 balls in an over, one no ball can actually throw the percentage of your over completely out. I hope I got the reference right for the cricket fans, but you know what I'm saying. Because it's only about 500 guys who are 500 boxes that are watching, if one of them sits and watches all day, or in this case, 4 or 5 of them sit and watch all day, you'll completely flip the numbers on the other side, which is why it becomes easy to manipulate. So now that you know that, we'll sort of dig a little deeper and understand this a little better. But I have a great panel. Uh, Shashi Sinha joins us. He is the group CEO, IPG. He's been in the industry for a really long time. He understands advertising, he understands brands. He also understands the ratings models really well. And he's offered suggestions to the rating models. Remember, we had TAM some time ago, which then was dismantled. And now we have BARC. So two different rating agencies, but largely similar problems. Mr. Prahlad Kakkar is a brand expert and you know, someone I respect as well. Mr. Kakkar, thank you for joining us. You understand branding and you understand advertising, and this is going to be an
Thank you,
interesting
Faye.
thing to get your point of view on. And Anurag Batra, the chairman and editor-in-chief of Business BW Business World, who tracks the television industry very closely, will join us as well. Let me get straight to it. Mr. Kakkar, I know that you have to leave early, so I'm going to come to you.
No, actually, that's been cancelled, so I'm okay.
Okay, fantastic, great. My first question to the both of you is this. Is the system flawed? And I want to here quote Prakash Javadekar, our current INB minister, who has said, and I quote, system needs to be overhauled and changed. I've said that 2 days ago, but broadcasters need to request it. Otherwise, it's an infringement on freedom of press. Does the system need to be overhauled? Mr. Kakkar, you first.
Yeah. Am I there?
Yes, go ahead.
I think so. I think the base, the overall base is too small. For the kind of viewership that we have, if we want any degree of accuracy and if we want anything actually coming in which is even close to the kind of accuracy that, say, American television gets in terms of its viewership or any other television, and we generate a hell of a lot of income out of advertising. Now, advertisers are very, advertisers are like businessmen. Okay. So when they are number 1 channel, number 2 channel, or number 3 channel, they will hedge their bets because they don't believe either of them. So they'll look at all the TRPs to a certain extent, and then they will divide the cake to a certain extent according to those percentages, but everything won't go to one channel. They'll never put their eggs in one basket. So if it's a two-party, election, like it hasn't been in India, where it's BJP and Congress, then every businessman, smart businessman, doesn't give all their money to the BJP. They will also give their money to the Congress. In case something happens and there's a sudden, upending of the whole thing, then they're not caught with their pants down. So everybody's covered. So you hedge your bets.
So, okay. So now let me ask you this question as a follow-up before I go to Mr. Sinha. When you say, with your analogy of give half to BJP, half to Congress, are you referring to the TRPs number 1 and number 2 channels, or are you referring to the content that the channels put out?
No, I'm referring to 1, 2, and 3. Okay,
Okay.
and then the weightages come in where in terms of content. Are you circus? Are you relatively sober? Are you doing your due diligence as far as news is concerned? Or are you just picking up rumor mongering from here, there, everywhere? Because all the lesser channels in the country don't have any idea of the truth. They just pick up whatever the bigger channels are doing and then they take it forward into a level of hysteria which is quite unbelievable.
Are you telling me that advertisers are sensitive to fake news, exaggerated news, hysteria, shouting, screaming?
To a certain extent, yes. Because see, what's happening is that the present news scenario is completely disenchanting young people. So they don't watch the news. They actually watch Faye. Because for some reason, you've resonated with the young people and they say turn on and feel that you, at least if you're not 100%, you are much more truthful and balanced than any of the news channels who have been either bought out or sold out.
Well, I thank you for that compliment, and I'll also then put out
No,
that
I'll
disclaimer.
tell you why I'm saying that. I have three
Yes.
grown
Okay.
sons in the house, and my
Okay.
dipstick is them. And none of them watch the news, but they listen to you on the net.
That's really nice to know. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Kakkar, for sharing that. To my audience, yes, I hope that people who are looking for an alternative come to this channel. Putting that out as a disclaimer. I used to also be in television. That's a second disclaimer. But we're trying to keep this as objective as possible, and the idea is to understand this better. Mr. Sinha, thank you for joining us. Same question to you, and I want you to just, we'll take that line a little further, Mr. Kakkar, saying that, the first three channels are picked up for ratings. Advertisers like to hedge across the three channels, and they're also sensitive to the quality of the news that gets put out. Is that something you've heard as well from your clients and from brands that you're talking to?
Can I firstly wish you a very happy birthday? I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Can I go back? I mean, I can't let it pass your original question, that is the system broken. So it's like this, you use a Ferrari to drive on a rickety road, and then you say things are not working. So BARC may not be a Ferrari. And I know something because I've been involved and how it works. So let me give you a bit of a perspective for your viewers. See, Indian television today and BARC is primarily used for, the rating is used for primarily buying and selling advertising and then evaluating content for the news part of other channels. Now, before we come to news, today the Indian television industry is 25,000 crores. All the news put together, that is, all the English, Hindi, language news will not be more than 15%. So if you do a rough and ready maths, so probably there will be about 3,000 crores or so, and maximum 3,000 crores. 20 to 23,000 crores is the rest. I assure you, there's no problem in the rest. When ratings are considered, so people look at ratings because, as you very correctly pointed out at the beginning, the sample sizes are large enough. India is a very heterogeneous country, unlike the West. So our number of meters are the highest in the world, more than China. We are far, far more than China. But having said that, in a heterogeneous country, and therefore extrapolating becomes a bit of an issue. But you will find BARC has laid out certain control parameters, saying this is what you must look data at. No one examines. People ignore it at their own convenience. So my point is that for 85% of the industry, BARC ratings are working very well. For 85% of the industry, BARC ratings are working very well. There is no issue at all. There is, as you said, there's no chess thumping who's number one, number two. And advertisers, contrary to Prahlad's point, advertise take calls. So someone will advertise only on Star TV, someone will advertise on ZTV and stuff like that. The problem is news. Now, if you come to news, as you very correctly said, because the penetration news was small, only 0.5% in prime time. Watch all the English channels put together, there are 15 of them. They divided. So, frankly, to us, if you ask any of my media planners, ratings don't matter. I mean, this is the ego of the, if I may say so, and I'm not saying things directly, the editors and the anchors, their ego. For us, for buyers in English news, I'm talking particularly in English news, ratings don't matter. What people do is what Prahlad said in a different manner. So I'm saying it for a logical reason that they spread their bets, not from a content point of view. They say, listen, this is, there are 15 news channels. I will buy 5 because the viewer is flicking. See, the news viewer is very fickle. He moves on from one channel to another in every 30 seconds, 1 minute. So as a result, I want my ads to be seen across, and therefore I buy 5. Because the ratings anyway don't come, and news are sold very cheap. News, unfortunately, because there are no ratings, is very cheap. So more often than not, news is brought on price. that what we call effective rate.
Okay. So one second, let me just see if, let me just explain this to the audience, and then because if you break it up, it's easier to understand. So you're saying that because the sample size is so small and almost insignificant for English news, advertisers don't take it very seriously. They in fact use the rate that the news channel is charging, saying that, okay, I have 100 rupees to spend in my entire marketing plan. I'm going to put some of it on cricket. I'm going to put some of it on general entertainment, and I've got this money left. Let's spread it across the top 5 news channels or the top 3 news channels, as the case may be. You decide based on how much money you have and how much they're charging. Absolutely. And not necessarily by number 1 or number 2.
So ratings don't matter at all. I'm saying for 9 times out of 10, if you talk to most, because finally we do the planning, as you got it bang on. The funnel is the general entertainment channels, the movies, and then it comes from cricket, big properties. By the time you come to news, that's why it is 15%, all news put together. And English will not be more than 5% of the pie. So if you're looking at English news, where all the excitement and drama is happening in recent times, there's hardly any money left. So that's first point. Second point I want to make on content. Today we are buying in advance because we do deals. We are buying 2 months in advance, 1 month in advance. We don't know what content is going to come. So, we're just buying. However, I'm happy to report there's a certain amount of sensitivity building in now. And our business, advertising, is a very volume-driven business. So youngsters are buying. So if I have 150 clients, there'll be 150 teams all over the country buying. We have no control on what the content will be 1 month later, 2 months later. We had a situation in one of our clients, Amul, where there was some content which came out that the program was bought 2 months in advance. Who knew what program was going to come on Sudarshan TV? You know what I mean? So today, of course, there's a certain sensitivity coming in because all what is happening, and people will become, I think, going forward, people become picky and choosy on content also. They will say, okay, this channel and not the channel. But as of now, it's got nothing to do with that. There's 5 channels, 4 channels in a basket. What can I afford? And I go with that.
Yes. Well, Anurag Batra has joined us as well. Mr. Batra, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Batra, for our audience, has been tracking television for so long. He perhaps understands this whole market better than many people. Mr. Batra, you'll have to mute whatever is on in your background. But I just want to ask you this question. We were talking about the fact that the BARC measurement has largely now been acknowledged as flawed, specifically to do with English news because of the sliver that it operates in. In that case, why is industry and advertisers and the entire sort of marketing community still going with it? Why hasn't anyone asked for an overhaul or asked for a suspension of these ratings if they are not to be trusted?
Thank you, Faye. First of all, I'm a student of media. People like Mr. Sinha are god of media planning buying and a brand. He's worked on the Amul brand. Prahlad is the Lord Shiva of advertising. But I'm a student of advertising and media. I've learned from people like Mr. Sinha and Prahlad. I just want to say, first of all, I heard Shashi say what he said, but I just want to say that the issues are a little larger. I have said this in our conferences, and Mr. Sinha was in the front row both times, that media planners can change the direction of the country. If they start supporting the right content, which doesn't promote hate speech, which takes real issues that matter to citizens and supports those channels, and Mr. Sinha and all the planners are wise enough to do. Having said that, as an advertiser, you're only worried about frequency and reach and the cost per rating points. So it is a numerical, call, so to say. Yes, there are qualitative calls. As he rightly said, advertisers have started to look at what kind of content. My larger point, Faye, to you would be that he said that advertisers do look at things beyond ratings, which is balance, editorial content, and most important, objectivity. Now, we're living in such a time where news objectivity is under question. The word objectivity is gone out. And the biggest damage that is happening is English news has a role to play, whatever be the numbers. I think today with this government, whether this government or other government, bureaucrats, people who don't want real story will use this to discredit the media and news media even more. Heads of countries of whether you take America or take any other country, what are we called these days? So they will use this to kind of paint everyone with the same brush, including you. You may not be in news TV. Anyone, because anyone who will ask questions will, they will make sure that the things are weakened. And in the last 20 years, this is the third serious controversy. There are controversies. There is a certain Hindi channel that got a lot of ratings last 2 months back. It's not the one that was in news yesterday. And, the head of the News Broadcasting Association wrote a letter to everyone about those ratings. So I think it's not the first time it has happened. We need to get more advertising funding. Mr. Sinha has been instrumental in setting up the BARC. I would say he's nurtured it. And I would say the current CEO is doing everything to clean it. Yesterday on another show, which you used to host, I was on the show and one panelist said the BARC hasn't done anything. The current CEO, 2.5 months back, let the COO, which was there in the system before that, let go. I mean, I have no point saying that Mr. Sinha may not be able to, because he's very closely involved with BARC. But the fundamental questions I want to raise is, BARC officials and Hansa officials who know about where the people meters are, who have sensitive data, should they be allowed to be consultants to news broadcasters or GCs where there is so much money, much more money? So English news has a certain amount of money, Hindi news has much more, but the GCs have much more money. So maybe there is something happening there also. The advertisers will need to ask more questions. So clearly, there are 3 solutions. I only want to focus on solutions. One is BARC and Hansa employees, whichever is the agency, should not be allowed to work with broadcasters for the next 3 years. I'm not saying forever, because at least the homes will. Second is, and I am saying this, in India, self-regulation doesn't work because we are culturally such that nothing is individuals also. It works where the cultures are right. We have a certain culture. I'm not criticizing our culture. And third point is, at the end of the day, it is about the advertiser money. If the advertisers, a certain internet giant over the last 6 months have been facing backlash from advertisers because they've been fanning hate speech. Now today, another advertiser, Rajiv Bajaj, came out and said that he would not advertise on 3 channels without naming them. Now, if the advertisers start doing this, dare I say, add 2 more layers of trust, credibility, balance, and positive impact, there must be an impact of news. And news is not like GEC. Whatever small place it may occupy, it still drives conversations. It gets people to form opinions, whether it's English news.
Okay, so let me just take this back to the other 2 guests. And I just want to point out that in 2017, Dr. Prannoy Roy of NDTV actually came out and said the same thing. He said the numbers are being manipulated. He said the data of where these boxes are, just to remind our viewers, remember I told you at the beginning that there are boxes placed in 40,000 homes. The detail of which which home the boxes are placed in is supposed to be secret, so that nobody can approach that home and sort of suggest that they watch one channel or the other or manipulate them in any way. What the Mumbai police is now suggesting in their complaint and their investigations, this is exactly what has happened. There are a certain number of homes that have been compromised and they're being offered money to watch channels. And one of those 3 channels that apparently allegedly has done this is Republic TV. That's the entire story. But this is not the first we have heard of it. It's very important to realize that this is an accusation that has been made repeatedly over many years. And I want to ask the panel this: why is it that this thing comes up? And I've heard it in my career in television come up many times, that the information is leaking in different parts of the country, and there are homes that are willing to take money sometimes for other free goods, even if it's not just cash. They will watch this channel or keep it on all day. It doesn't cost them anything. Why hasn't that been solved? Because effectively then decisions that are being made by the entire advertising industry are being made on flawed data. So Mr. Sinha, I want to ask you first, why hasn't it been solved? And previously
so
with
delighted.
now.
So thanks for asking the question. So, I have tremendous passion and ownership. I know what the flaws are. I have passion for what is happening because I was involved in the setup and still am. So let me give you a couple of answers. We are delighted the Mumbai police has taken action. I don't know whether what channel has been named, not changed, which channel they filed, which is not. There's a lot of confusion. I know some of the details, but that's not the point to make on your show. At any point in time, BARC in the last 5 years would have filed 10 to 15 FIRs all over the country. Any point in time in the last 5 years. So if you see, there'll be about 75, 80 FIRs all over. No one takes action, correct? Because all the channels that news channels, all this is a problem of news. This is not a problem elsewhere, primarily. Yeah, but on big GC is not there. So obviously there's political alignment and their connections, and no one wants to take the news plans. Who's infiltrating? Who gains by infiltration? Who gains? News channels gain. So your point that, it's as Anurag said, the ethos of us, that why does fixing don't happen, infiltration as we call it in the rest of the world? Because that's the ethos of the market. Why in US it don't happen? So that's one part, which is linked to ethos and thing. The second part is, it's not that solutions are not known. It's very easy for the minister to say what he said. He also knows the solution, we also know the solution. Solution was recommended by us, yours truly being one of them, about 3 years back, and we constantly remind MIB and TRI. Solution is as follows, that if you allow return part data on set-top boxes to come back, you'll get millions and millions of homes. You will not have this problem of 100 homes for news. The problem is not in GEC where you have a sizable number of homes. So if you allow return part data, now you have to ask them why they're not agreeing to return part data coming back. I've asked this question to TRI in the last interaction 15 days back, before the controversy broke. So I think in India, solutions, technology is not an issue. Solution is not an issue. Dr. Rao also knows.
So let me explain this to the audience. So what you're saying, and I, that was incidentally going to be my next question to you on why this measure is so primitive, right? Yeah. Why are we putting hardware in people's houses where someone can go and offer them like a new dining table in return for watching my channel? Why everybody is now 100% on set-top boxes? The set-top box is effectively a computer that can actually measure who's watching what at what time. It has that data. You're saying if that data was actually used, then we would have all the data accurately in the country. You wouldn't have to do this, this business anymore. Yeah. But who's saying no? What is it the set-top box companies?
Permission. No. Okay. So why would Tata Sky or Dish TV or someone else share data unless they're mandated to share data? It's not about money because that's valuable. Data is valuable. So, and BARC has offered in the past to give them money. There's a limit to which you can do. But the fact is that this has to be, the whole BARC was set up. The BARC model is an industry body. You must explain. It's not a private body. It's all the stakeholders in the thing. And it was mandated by TRI. MIP, on a TRI recommendation, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, started this whole thing. It's mandated. It's by act. So if it's by act of parliament, by that logic, we had made a request to them saying, why don't you mandate that set-top box companies have to share? I'm not saying all the data, but a far, far larger sample of data with us. That's not been done for whatever reasons. I mean, that's the question to be asked to the minister or whoever else.
Mr. Kakkar, do you want to weigh in on this? The primitive way in which the data is actually measured at this point, which allows for manipulation. And Mr. Sinha effectively said that we put up the traffic lights, but unfortunately, people are going to break the signal and they're going to find ways to break the signel. That's just the culture.
And that's in news. That's the culture of the news. It's not so much in the GC space thing.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting, Mr. Sinha. But effectively, the industry that is meant to be the most ethical is the only one that's breaking the rules.
So, Faye, if you connect the dots, if I'm saying that for my clients, ratings don't matter in English news, yet there are channels saying I'm 80% share, 50% share every morning, evening. I'm number one, I'm number two. So it's a mindset. It's about being more powerful than what you are actually. So it's not about just BARC and BARC being effective. It's something which is fundamentally defective with the English news ecosystem.
Is it only English news? Hindi doesn't do it?
Hindi also does it, but Hindi is slightly different.
But news does it.
Mr. Kakkar.
News by and large does it for the simple reason that news is now polarized and aligned. Okay, you're either for or against the incumbent government. I don't think there are very few non-aligned, completely true to the news channels, because they might not be getting either enough government lagers or they might not be getting any private lagers. Now, the fact is that everybody survives on advertising money of some kind or another. If they actually turn around and keep saying we're the best, we're the first, we're the whatever circus that they put up in place of news, of real news, whatever diversification that they do from what the issues that face the country are, and you talk more about Bollywood and who's smoking pot and who's not doing anything. I mean, that is, in my opinion, that is not news. That is entertainment. And it's actually stardust. Why do you read stardust? Because you want to read gossip about everybody in the film industry. So
Mr. Kakkar,
proven it right, that if you turn around and take a particular industry and target it and bring out all the dirty linen and wash it in public, you will get lots of eyeballs, but you will get no retention. and you will get
No,
no
but I have this.
credibility.
I have a question for you. So now we actually, while the two of you are great friends, you and Mr. Sinha are saying now opposite things, because let me understand this. So basically, if what a television channel, news channel specifically English will want to do is, you're saying, put up the biggest nautanki, which is street theater for people who are not from Mumbai, that they can, in order to get as many passerbys to stop and watch them, right? Which is what happens in a nautanki. What this does is increases their ratings, and they become number one or number two, which they then do chest thumping about because it gives them even more attention. Eyeballs, as
It's
you
not
say, is what
attention.
they want.
It's initially we think it's money, but it's not. It's actually getting enough eyeballs at the right time with the right kind of disinformation. If you want to spread
No,
that.
but Mr. Sinha says that ratings is not a factor in advertisers deciding whether or not to put
No.
money. So where is the money coming from then?
No. The money is coming from the fact that the more nautanki you do, actually the more eyeballs you get on a short-term basis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it might not be serious news watchers.
So Prahlad,
but
can I just jump in? 0.23% rating English news 15 channels. Yeah?
Yes.
Or 0.5% rating. You be liberal. Let's take a number of 1%.
Yes.
1% between 15 channels is, so if you increase eyeballs, you reduce eyeballs, don't make a damn difference to an advertiser. He's just saying, okay, these are 5 respected channels, I will buy this.
No, what I'm saying is that there is a completely different agenda here.
That I agree.
Okay, and the agenda is that English-speaking people in this country are very influential as far as economics is concerned, as far as business is concerned, as far as role models are concerned. Okay, they actually manage to influence people up and down the road for whatever it was, which is why Mumbai was such an influential city for small towns, because they would copy fashion, they would copy whatever the language, they would copy the walk, they'd copy the talk. And so a lot of advertisers actually thought that if you are doing lifestyle advertising, just concentrate on Bombay, the whole country is going to follow it. Okay, so it's like a domino effect. Now, the English news influence them in any manner, then they influence a hell of a lot more people who do not watch English news.
That's the submission I'm making. The difference in eyeballs is not huge. This is the perception they're creating.
That is the physical difference in eyeballs. But what about minds?
Correct.
What about hearts and minds? I'm more interested in the heart.
Something, but I remember when I was in television, we used to get very clear notices from BARC that said, listen, you can't cut the numbers in this fashion. If you want to put it up in advertising, this is what you can say. You have to take 4 weeks average. You have to take all days. You have to take all markets. But we've seen almost all English news channels break those rules. So they'll take a cut of 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, only weekdays, only mega cities, only between this age group and that age group. Incidentally measure only men. I don't know why. Why doesn't BARC step in, or should BARC step in and clarify that this is not the right way to measure and this is wrong? What is being put out is falsifying or misrepresenting.
How do you know BARC doesn't step in? If they can take on the Mumbai Police Commissioner and call him names on national television, then what is BARC? I mean,
but it should BARC then put it out publicly. Like, for example, if there's a channel that is bragging on Twitter, should BARC's media team say, hey, you know what, this is the actual number, this is a misrepresentation?
You see,
okay.
Without going into too much detail, you see, it's a fine balancing act, and I'm just not the spokesman for BARC, but from a distance, my heart beats. So BARC is damned either way. So if they do less, they're damned. If they do more, like the current case. So some channel is saying, why have you named us in the FIR? If we have not named, BARC is not named, police are named in the FIR, whoever it is. BARC has just filed a complaint against an ex-employee. So whichever way it's a tight position for Sunil Lola to be in, whichever way he does is going to be damned. But let me assure you, BARC does a lot. It's not the rule.
So when you say BARC does a lot, could you tell us what that lot is?
There is a disciplinary committee which checks in. There is a disciplinary committee which is there. There is the justice there who puts in. There is an ex-police commissioner of Mumbai, Mr. Shivanandan, who is part of the disciplinary committee. They drawn up from all sections, and and there's a protocol laid out. So the protocol is followed without going into too much of details of what the actions have been taken, because the desire is not to make it public. The public naming and shaming, because if it happens public naming and shaming, as you see what's happened this time. So there is a desire. Like I said, at any point in time, there are 10, 12 FIRs filed all over the country at any point in time. So mark my words. So that's a lot, And FIR is the last stage. it's become high profile for various reasons. I mean, you know the reasons why it's become high profile. No one's bothered about what happened in Assam or what's happened in Karnataka or Bangalore. If I was a fight, people ignore it. So actually, if I was Sunil, I'd be delighted with what's happening. At least, people will be scared that, something can happen.
No, but the common man will know a lot more about how it works.
Yes, that's good.
And therefore, that his choice of whether he's watching news as entertainment or whether he's watching news as news is actually going to be then registered.
Most of them know it's entertainment. I mean, your point that Saas Bahu on Star Plus or now Saas Bahu Republic.
Yes. I mean, no, but
don't underestimate the viewer. The viewer knows that what's happening.
When entertainment, when news becomes entertainment, then it stops being news. And then, therefore, the impression that you get is it's far easier to indoctrinate in a Pavlovian sense people who actually look at it for enjoyment.
I disagree with that. Today, what's happened is, and Anurag will agree with what I'm saying, people have got polarized and they look for reaffirmation and they look for, so they say, okay, this is what I believe in. And whatever they hear, it just reaffirms what they're saying. And if they don't, they switch off. So this is my personal opinion. And for the country, it's a very dangerous stage, not a topic for discussion. But everything is left or right. Nothing in between.
I just want to bring in Mr. Batra to respond to that. Mr. Batra, I know that you've been looking at this very carefully. Could you tell us what you think? Do you believe that, there should be a combination, like you said, of brands pulling back, of, BARC doing more, or just that the audience now understands that there is a problem?
You're on mute.
First of all, I'm not suggesting brands pull back. I'm saying they look at qualitative aspects, which media planners do, but they can do better because ratings are a starting point, especially on what rate you buy it. So yes, these 5 channels be in the plan, but what is the average yield per buy, right? So that determines the revenue, right? That's the nuance point. Second is, I again want to agree with Mr. Sinha that set-top boxes are actual viewing data. Why can't we have the matter ends?
Exactly.
So clearly, government doesn't want this. Any government, I'm not talking, doesn't want news channels ever to be in a situation where they're financially so stable that they can really be on their own. Let me say this without.
That's the point. That's the big point he's making.
Right. Another thing, I want to give a solution. Hariri said recently in his book, he wrote that if the people don't pay for a product, they become the product themselves. So we started parading people on news channel. I'm a person who's watched news from the age of 8, read newspapers. I cannot live without news in newspapers. And so is my 17-year-old daughter, though her sources are a little different than mine. Because, news, it has a certain value, as Prahlad said. It builds role models. It builds conversations. It builds, the people who watch English news has a certain influence. Similarly, Hindi news can impact views and elections like the Hindi newspapers. So I want to give you two. One, there should be multiple sources of data. First, it could be, so BARC could have its panel of 40,000, 50,000. There's an economic issue also. I'm not going into that. Who will fund more people?
It's very convenient to miss that.
Yeah. So I'm not, because there has to be a solution. The advertisers have to fund that. Will the advertiser? Now, someone gave an idea a couple of years back that, as Shashi rightly said, you go to UK, US, the audience research is owned by broadcasters and it works well. Self-regulation works. It doesn't work well. So somebody gave an idea in India, let's get broadcasters not to be part of it, media agencies, get clients to pay for it, have no client, no agencies and owners as part of the council. Now, again, that would not work because they're all stakeholders in the ecosystem. So my solution is multiple sources of data, qualitative assessment, and third, what is happening? One news channel talking about another news channel negatively. I think it just brings all of us down. It doesn't work. I don't want to say all of them are my friend. It doesn't work. And the police commissioner in Bombay may genuinely be colored about what he's done. Right? That is a possibility. I don't know. I'm not. But the complaint was done by Hansa and BARC. So they do keep checks. And I can tell you there cannot be a finer person than Sunil Lula to head it. Okay, I can put a hand over my heart and say there's nobody better. So I just want to move forward saying, one, news is not a normal pie. It impacts elections, mindsets. So we have to look at news. News is an impact, whatever. Faye used to do a show on TV, the kind of accolades you would get, feedback on the stories, I don't even know Tanvi Shukla, but about 7 months back, she did something on mental health much before the pandemic, and I texted, because we don't talk about mental health on national level. We don't talk about air quality index. Wait another 10 days. Let's look at the quality of air in Delhi. So I think,
I just want to go back to one thing that Mr. Batra said, which is you said that government doesn't want channels to be financially independent.
Correct.
Could you explain
every
that
government,
to us?
government
Every
wants a
government.
strong media. There's no question about it. It's like, it's ABCD. It's not like, otherwise they would accept some of the demands of the industry. I mean, if somebody has a company as Shashi, and Shashi has the industry behind him, has proposed something as a station, then if the subsequent governments have not accepted, clearly they think in the same way. Look at digitization of cable. It took 25 years. 10 years after the law was passed, it has still not got completed. It's getting completed now. We gave Ambika Soni the impact person of the year 10 years back. It's getting implicated. So I think fundamentally, if we continue this tutu mehma amongst ourselves, there's somebody else who will reap the benefits, because they want to bring our credibility down. If we are each saying channels are rigged, the ratings are rigged, then they will paint all of us with the same brush. It is so convenient and easy. So
Let me take that. Let me take that point to Mr. Kakkar. Mr. Kakkar, this point you said yes. The government doesn't want financially independent news, and I'm just now, joining all of the things that the three of you said to this. News channels are an expensive prospect. You need upwards of 150 employees. You need satellite space. You need distribution. You need fancy equipment. You need reporters all over the country. News gathering is expensive. The only route of revenue is through advertising. Advertising then depends on how well you rate, or it depends on the eyeballs and the influence you create. And so now the TRP battle becomes central to these news channels, and also government, as we can see. Let's be honest about it, guys. Government spending is a large chunk of advertising. Janhit mein jari PSA advertising is a lot. In fact, according to an RTI, the government between 2014 and 2019 spent upwards of 5,000 crore rupees for a starving industry. That is a lot of money to be spending on news for advertisements, Mr. Kakkar. What influence does that place then on these news channels?
Lot. Because, see, as long as the government can keep the news channels on the breadline, and they're on the straight and the narrow, they can actually influence them by showing them a little carrot or giving them a little danda. So the carrot and stick thing works constantly with government because they want an agenda pushed. Some channels do their agenda willingly because they align with them very clearly. Some channels who are sitting on the fence and are actually trying to report what we call non-alignedly are then shown the stick or the carrot, depending on what works for them. And so if it's a completely independent, financially independent body of news, then they'll tell the truth. And sometimes it's an inconvenient truth.
Which is what we don't want. I'm just going to round this off now with this one point. Mr. Sinha did say he's happy that the police is looking into it now, because everybody's just going to be more aware and more careful. And maybe self-regulation didn't work, Mr. Sinha, in this industry.
So let me qualify. I'm not happy because they wrote me, they called me tomorrow, so I'm not really delighted with the idea of going. but having said that, I'm happy at least those 15 other FIRs in other markets, the news guys, at least some of them will be careful. Not everyone is so brazen as they were before this episode. So I'm not going to the merits of this episode, who's right, who's wrong.
But do you see this? I mean, obviously news, and I've explained this to my audience in the past, news should be self-regulated, because as soon as you give somebody else power over news, they will now start using it, wrongly.
That's the end of it.
But do you see, I mean, unfortunately, we're talking about this ethical industry not having the ethics. Unfortunately, we're talking about this ethical industry not having the ethics. So do you see that this is necessary? This sort of policing, is it necessary for this industry?
Finally, it will only work if they all get together. I mean, that's finally, in my mind, I've seen, ours is a very competitive industry. We're part of IIM. But a lot of stuff we do behind the scenes together. So we compete by day, but we are friends by night. We collaborate in a lot of issues, industry issues. Unless the egos are kept aside, this whole thing of the point which you made of TRPs, not for buying as much as for their own egos. So I was simplifying it for Anurag, saying that, what Anurag is right. It does matter, but finally it doesn't make a matter of life and difference as it does in the GC space. It's all the egos that, I'm 70% share, I'm 40% share, but that I'm not, I'm this. That's the thing. That changes.
What if tomorrow somebody raises questions on GCs, Mrs. Sinha? Have you seen it since 2002?
BARC was started only 5 years back, Anurag. I didn't get your point.
Not BARC, but rating. Not about BARC, about rating. TAM. I'm not a BARC, I know.
Nielsen, and then Nielsen fell into discredit because
So I tell you, let me give you an honest answer. And this is a link to Faye's point. My summation is that the 4 big guys, which is Star, Viacom, Z and Sony, who are in a way the founding fathers of BARC, and who pump in all the money. Almost, I think, 60-70% of the money comes in from them to keep BARC going. BARC is a 200 crore plus organization. Such a big money is going in. They, in their leadership, and that's the point where you were making, have decided, and that we will be in it together. We will run a clean system. We will run a system which is no finger-pointing. So if they 4 of them together, you can challenge that. So some fellow somewhere may be doing, but if the 4 of them,
I agree with you.
So 4 of them together, which contribute to almost today, I was seeing the data, contribute to about 40% of the share of audience or whatever through the network. If they are aligned, or maybe 45 also, if you look Sun TV, if they are aligned, then it doesn't matter. Because the big boys are saying, is the point you are making, that if self-regulation, they're saying we are together, we will not, so then there's no issue. Finally, the money is coming from the broadcast system.
Right. Mr. Kakkar, I give you the last word. Obviously, a lot needs to be done, but is it a good thing that at least the audience knows to some extent that maybe they should look at this with a raised eyebrow, that not take everything at face value that's coming out of news channels?
But the youngsters are doing precisely that. If you look at the 18 to 25-year-olds, they've stopped watching news. And if you look at a dipstick, especially in cities like Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore and Chennai, they just do not watch news. They mind the social media for what they think is the news and what is the truth. So they all want to know the truth, and they get it from 5-6 different sources. And each one of them is juggling those sources and saying, okay, this one said this one said this. So somewhere in the middle lies the truth. Now, the key is in this age group, 18 to 25, because they stopped reading newspapers, they stopped watching television news. What do you do with them? They're 75% of this country.
On that point, I'm going to leave it there, because that was my entire focus behind starting this YouTube channel and the organization that we have launched, because there is an entire group of Indians who are underserviced because nobody's giving them the news. They're not watching television, they're not reading the newspaper, and you need to be informed, because that's what makes you a good voter. Someone who is properly informed will go out and vote correctly. And remember, young people is our largest demographic of voters in this country, and our democracy is on their shoulders. They're the future of the country, and servicing them is an important role at this point. So it is a terribly flawed system, largely
for English news only.
For English news only, because the stakeholders are flawed. And that, I think, is something we need to realize, that the reason why there are so many accidents is not because the traffic lights don't work, it's because nobody's following these lights and they're busy racing past each other simply for ego and chest thumping purposes. And that's the problem. I think that for me, it's, this is one of the reasons, quite honestly, I also exited television, but it's disappointing to hear that of all the things you see on television, the industry that is meant to be ethical by design is the one that is functioning in the most unethical way. And that's the problem with the ratings as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for helping us understand this better. I appreciate your time. I apologize for the dog, but I think our audience benefited greatly from your explanation. I do hope we can have more follow-up discussions as this case progresses. Mr. Sinha, good luck for tomorrow. You talk to the Mumbai police and answer their questions. We hope to have a more clear and a better regulated or a self-regulated industry at the end of it. That's the best we can hope for as audience members. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.